Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Right Side Rising. So, today we're going to be talking about a rather interesting topic. So, Trump, again yesterday, visited the Middle East. He went to Israel and gave a fiery speech to the Israeli parliament where he talked about pardoning Bibi. He recommended Bibi actually to be pardoned by the Israeli president. The president can do that for the prime minister if you didn't already know that. And he addressed quite a few other points. And he talked more logistics of the peace plan in Gaza. Hostages were released over, I think it was around 1,900 hostage or prisoners, according to Israel, were released back to Gaza and other areas that the Palestinian prisoners came from. And Gaza, coming out of Gaza, so 20 hostages, so the remaining hostages, 20 held by Hamas, were released and given back to Israel. All men, by the way. Just let that sink in. All men. No women hostages left out of however many were taken. Let that sink in. Like, that tells us something about the type of culture that radical Islamists seek to spread. Clearly, women are not very important in that society. I mean, none were returned. The horrors that they probably experienced when they were in captivity. Hamas has been known for being very brutal, and this is just another example of why we can't let radical Islamists come to the United States and also know who we're dealing with here when we discuss peace plans and policy in the Middle East. Also know who we're discussing about. And also, let us know who we're discussing with in Israel. They're not any better. I'm not pro-Palestine. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm pro-humanity. I'm pro-peace. And it seems like neither side have been capable of that up until now. It's been shaky. This has probably been one of the more shaky ceasefire deals. Israel went out and started shooting people on the beaches with tanks, and airstrikes continued even after the talks were progressing. Not very good if you want to put yourself in the best position to negotiate, but they did it anyways. The deal still got done. I mean, hey, but it was a little shaky. And Trump obviously visited Israel and visited Egypt, and now the peace plan is now in rather full effect, and the end of the war is in sight. But Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, wasn't there in Egypt. He was invited. President Trump extended the invitation to Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, who is part of these negotiations. I mean, we're talking about the president of the nation who is part of these peace negotiations and should be part of the summit. And he didn't show up because of a rather less significant Jewish holiday that I believe he was using as an excuse to not show up to Egypt and face his problems. So obviously, we're so thankful for peace and Israel's compliance in the peace plan for the most part, but we have to ask ourselves, why is Bibi not going to go to Egypt? Is he afraid that Egypt will comply with the ICC? I mean, I don't know, but those are questions that we all have to ask. And I'm not going to go down too deep into those. But that's besides the point. What I want to make a point is that I feel like something else is building up or progressing. Like something else is this is like the calm before the storm, if you will. And I don't know, but I have a very weird feeling that something else is happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. Obviously, Bibi didn't show up to the Egypt summit, which is weird because for the most part, Bibi has been pretty compliant and he has been obviously willing for negotiation and peace, which is amazing, and I credit him for that. For the most part, I mean, it's been pretty shaky. Obviously, getting a ceasefire deal across for an endless conflict like this is very, very hard, obviously, because there's so many stipulations. This is sort of a deep war. You know, it's kind of deeper, and it's not everything that you see on the surface. This is kind of an ongoing. This is part of ongoing tensions that have been happening and building up, and kind of reached a point. And again, you have to realize that this started back in 1948 when Israel was first founded. This isn't just what you see on the surface. This is pretty underlying. There is obviously tension, and it feels like that tension has kind of reached a boiling point lately with the war, and the war has, kind of progressed, or the war progressed into something that we didn't really expect it to get to, but it got there, you know. But now with the ceasefire negotiations in rather full effect and the end in sight, it feels like something else is brewing. So whether it's within the Gaza Strip, not Israel, whether it's in the Gaza Strip with Hamas and other and other militias that reside in the Gaza Strip, because it's not just Hamas, there are other militias, but you kind of wonder if it's going to happen with determining who's going to govern the Gaza Strip. I mean, that's a big, big responsibility. 2 million people total, that population is. And you're telling me that Hamas, a militia with really no form of structure or law or anything, any qualities of a government or a governing power. So you have to really ask yourself who's going to govern the Gaza Strip, and that kind of leads us into these fears that something else is brewing, and it might not be Israel versus Hamas, but it might actually be within the Gaza Strip. So kind of have to ask yourself, is something happening? Something occurring that we don't know about? Personally, I have a feeling that something is brewing, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's going to be within with the discussion on who's going to govern the Gaza Strip, 2 million Palestinians, but it's almost like the calm before the storm. And again, Bibi being absent from the that summit in Egypt, which is pretty symbolic. It's a little weird that he's not there. Is something else going to happen that he may know about? Is there something else that he needs to draw his attention to? Might sound crazy, but is Hamas planning another attack? You need to ask these questions. And it's weird. And obviously the Middle East being such a animostic, I believe that's the right word, place. The Middle East has always seen tensions. Everybody's in close quarters. Israel is hated by all the Arab nations. Israel, for the most part, the people, at least, I can say that with guarantee, they want peace. And a majority, I'd say, I don't know if I want to say majority, but a majority of Israelis or Israeli Jews want to live in peace with Israeli Muslims and surrounding Arab countries. But there is animosity. There's a lot of turmoil between them. And you almost wonder if something else is brewing. Even though there's peace on the horizon, you want to ask yourself, is something else brewing? And these countries, obviously, each country hates the other. And in times of peace and a summit, the countries, or at least the Israeli prime minister, doesn't even show up. And for some of these Middle Eastern trips, these trips to the Middle East that President Trump has been making, Israel has been absent. They didn't send an ambassador. The prime minister didn't go. President didn't go. And yeah, obviously absent from these Middle East trips. And they're all very symbolic, and they all pertain, or for the most part, pertain to peace and negotiation between Israel and other Arab countries, and Israel has been absent. And President Trump extended the invitation again, but Israel didn't send anybody. So is there some other, tensions happening? Like some other tensions that are kind of arising that we don't know about? Obviously, the news is focused on these ceasefire, the ceasefire and peace plan, but again, you have to ask yourself, is something else happening really behind the scene? Really? Because the Middle East has been a breeding ground for problems and problems. And again, there's other things that could be causing this. And there's been again, like I said, a struggle for power in the Gaza Strip, and Hamas and other local militias engaged in fights, armed with weapons. And the people of Gaza do not like Hamas. They hate Hamas for the most part. I can say that for generally. They don't want war. The people of Israel don't want war. The people of Gaza don't want war. But again, Hamas, they have been pretty compliant. But now they're engaging with local militias. Are local militias trying to now overthrow Hamas? Because even though Hamas isn't the established government or established government body, they still have the power. They still are the ones that control. Whatever they do will affect the Gaza Strip. We've seen that they attacked Israel, and then the Gaza Strip got obliterated as a result of their actions. I mean, maybe Israel went a little too far, but either way, it still all came down to what happened on October 7th. And Hamas were the ones who attacked first. And again, I'm not condoning any action. You know, obviously the siege of the Gaza Strip and the things that have been occurring there are, you know, for the most part, inexcusable. But it all came down to who attacked who. And it was Hamas on October 7th. And clearly that shows us that Hamas is not a stable governing power, and they should not be given the right or privilege to taking over a strip home of 2 million people in a war-torn country who don't want to see war. They want to prosper. The people of Gaza and the people of Palestine, they want to thrive. They want to prosper. They want to build a successful nation. They want to build a nation that they can raise their kids in, and their kids can raise their kids in. And Hamas clearly are not able to provide that. We saw, so very little aid was able to get through. Gaza has sort of been like a fortified base, if you will, for Hamas, and it has been getting airstriked, or at least it was getting airstriked every other I mean, maybe even every day, in part of Israel's siege on the Gaza Strip. But Hamas really has torn that place apart. And whether they did it or not, whether they dropped the bombs, their governance, as a result of their governance, that place is a hellhole. And certainly, like I said again, Hamas is not a stable governing body, and certainly the people of Gaza do not want Hamas to govern the Gaza Strip, a strip of 2 million people, 2 million people who just want to get their lives together, for the most part. And Hamas stole aid. They shot people. They fired rockets at Israel, and again, I might be wrong, but some of them might have actually came back on the Strip. I mean, whatever Hamas has done has not been good. Their actions have caused the people of Gaza to suffer and die. I mean, so many people in Gaza have died. And not completely, but generally as a result of the actions of Hamas, who seeks to be the governing body of Gaza, even after they freaking blew people's heads off in Israel on October 7th and all the things they've done. They stole aid. They stole truckloads of aid. And so that clip is terrifying. And people are throwing stones. These Gazans are throwing stones at these trucks. There's militants standing on top of the trucks. And again, I don't have to explain everything because you guys saw it for yourselves, but Hamas militants standing on top of the trucks, shooting, firing. And that's, if you really look at it, that's the government, or who wants to be the government, shooting to make sure that they don't throw rocks or they don't get a hold of that aid. And they even hoarded aid from the people of Gaza. They hoarded aid from them in warehouses, and Gazans found it. They found the aid stored up. People, we're talking people that were famished, people that haven't eaten for days, people that have eaten very minimal for days and weeks and months, children, have suffered as a result. Children have died as a result of malnourishment. And the people of Gaza, they find a warehouse storing aid that Hamas stored in the warehouse. They hoarded from the people and are and for I'm just making an assumption, but I can infer that the people that Hamas hoarded this aid and distributed it very strategically to manipulate the prices and manipulate the demand. And obviously everything amounts to their benefit. And you're going to tell me that Hamas is going to govern the Gaza Strip? You are absolutely a fool. You are fooled by the mainstream media. You are truly fooled if you think that Hamas is going to rule the Gaza Strip after what they did, after their actions that resulted in the death of tens of thousands of Palestinians. They hoarded aid. They shot at their own people, trying to get these truckloads of aid that they then brought back to warehouses to manipulate the demand and manipulate the price for food, for water, the basic necessities. You think the people of Gaza are ever going to forgive Hamas? I don't think so. So again, we have to ask the question, who the heck is going to rule the Gaza Strip now that this peace plan and the war is over? Who is going to do it? And these local militias that are engaging with Hamas, that signals an end of the war between Israel and Hamas, but it doesn't signal the end to turmoil and conflict from within the Gaza Strip. You also have to take that into account. The war between Israel and Hamas might be over, but is the war in Gaza, war and conflict in Gaza really coming to an end? Or the militias just going to fight it out to the death, and the people of Gaza are just going to all die off? I mean, so many have already died as a result of the war with Israel, but are more people going to die? Is the Gaza Strip going to self-detonate? And I truly think if these militias try to overthrow Hamas, or Hamas continues to be the governing body, or at least the de facto ruling power in the Gaza Strip, and you have to understand the context of the situation. You have to understand, if you don't study the history of the Gaza Strip and all these past events from hundreds of years ago, then you're not going to know what to say when it comes time. You shouldn't have a say, or you shouldn't be expressing your opinion when it comes to that Gaza Strip, because that history is rich. That history is deep. I mean, this is a very resilient people, being moved around so much, and just kind of got it forced on them that they had to move into the Gaza Strip and compact. And obviously the 2 million people figure, that wasn't always the case, but so many people had to kind of pack into the Gaza Strip. And then when Israel left, it was just hell breaks loose. A de facto ruling terrorist organization takes over. And these people are very resilient. They had to deal with a war that Hamas caused, and that their Israeli neighbors certainly weren't going to let up for a while. And we saw that. They did. It ended. It ended. I mean, at what cost, but at least the war ended. Thousands and thousands of lives were saved as a result of President Trump's continued pursuit of peace. But again, is the war in Gaza really done? Is the conflict in Gaza really done? How bad is the struggle of power going to be for the people? These people don't want to see war anymore. We don't want to see war anymore. Obviously, I'm America first, and this conservative movement and 99% of people really care about what's happening in America first. But we also have to make sure that we follow up on our promise, and our promise is to bring peace to the region. I'm not a globalist. I'm a strong advocate for Americanism, and we must obviously protect our interests. And right now, our interests are in bringing peace to Israel, to the Gaza Strip, to Palestine, and just to the Middle East, and even the world. I mean, President Trump and the administration has been working very closely with so many different world powers to bring an end to the wars. Cambodia, Thailand, Rwanda. He's tried with Ukraine and Russia. He just bargained the end of the war for Israel and Hamas, Azerbaijan and Armenia. I mean, clearly the president and his administration's interests are in pursuing peace and defending peace. And obviously, we, the people of America, care more about America than ever. But we have 200, and that's an also overlooked thing, or an overlooked topic. But we have 200 U.S. troops right now in the region to make sure that this peace plan actually turns out successful and everything goes smoothly. So when if all hell breaks loose in Gaza, what's going to happen to our troops? Are they going to get shot at? Are they going to be in harm's way? So we need to be very cautious, and we need to monitor the situation very closely. So if all hell does break loose, we get them right the heck out of there. We can't put 200 American lives at risk in pursuit of peace in the Gaza Strip. I mean, certainly peace in the Gaza Strip has been a big goal of the Trump administration, and it's certainly something that everybody in America wants. I mean, you're crazy if you don't want it. But we can't also endanger our own troops, 200 peacekeeping troops from the United States, American citizens, warriors. We can't have them in harm's way. So what happens if all hell breaks loose in Gaza? What happens if Hamas engages them, you know? And if anything happens to the troops, one troop dies, or somebody gets injured, somebody gets shot at, somebody gets blown up. Like, for example, the Abbey Gate, what happened at the Abbey Gate. Personally, I think there would have been more continued action if we didn't have such a weak president. Certainly any strong president, like President Trump, is going to take action if even one single soldier is injured. I mean, we had like 13 soldiers that died at the Abbey Gate explosion, and we didn't do anything to make sure that they were avenged. And sometimes avenging death isn't always the best thing. You know, sometimes you can't, a bad thing shouldn't be followed by another bad thing, or two wrongs don't make a right, but that's 13 American soldiers that died, and we didn't take any action. And I sure as hell can tell you now that if any American dies or any American gets seriously injured in the Gaza Strip or in or around this region as they are trying to keep peace, or as a result of a revolution that might be taking place in the Gaza Strip to overthrow the Hamas governing body, or the Hamas militia, or terrorist organization, whatever you want to call it, they certainly check all the boxes. I can assure you that war will happen. War will happen. If American soldiers or an American soldier dies or gets injured seriously in the Gaza Strip or around that region, all hell is going to break loose. And that's where I kind of, right now, that's where I kind of have this, I wouldn't say doubt, because this peace plan does look like it actually is going to hold up. The peace plan does look like it's going to hold up. But internally in the Gaza Strip, it feels like something might be brewing, especially with such a shaky leadership. The governing body is a terrorist organization, a militia that doesn't know anything about governing, but simply waging war on their neighbors and stealing from their people. That's all Hamas knows. They don't know any better than that. They're a terrorist organization. They cut people's head off. They shoot people. They viciously murdered people on October 7th. They've always been violent. They're a very violent group. What tells you they're going to just change? Just because the war's over with Israel, that's not going to change. They're always going to be violent. They're never going to be looking in the interest of the Palestinian people. I mean, look who we're dealing with. We're dealing with, Hamas is basically like a cartel that has control of 2 million people. Control of a strip that has 2 million people. Nothing's going to change about Hamas. Hamas is always going to be like this. And while it might be in the shadows, you know, this fight and struggle for power might be in the shadows. People might just always assume Hamas is going to be the ruling body. I mean, obviously that's a big topic of discussion, but that's kind of an overlooked part of this. So will a militia wage war on another? I mean, I don't know. But all I can tell you is that something is brewing. Something big is brewing, and I feel it. We all feel it. The peace plan was very shaky. It seems like it's a little more solidified now. And it seems like this is actually going to go through, finally, and thank God. But something else is brewing. And that's how I feel. That's how a lot of others feel. And especially with this region And with this people that we're dealing with and bargaining with, very resilient people, there's always room for error. And again, especially because you have a de facto ruling terrorist organization. So, I don't know. All I'm saying, something is brewing. It's not good. Time will tell. We don't know if it'll be between Israel and other Arab nations. We don't know if there's tensions, if there's tensions in between them, or obviously there's tensions in the Gaza Strip with Hamas and other militias. Is there going to be a civil war in Gaza even after the war with Israel ends? How bad is the extent of a civil war? You know, what extent will a civil war go to? How bad will it be? I mean, will the Gaza Strip self-eradicate? Even if it's not what the people want, will the Gaza Strip self-eradicate if local militias engage with, or Hamas engages with local militias, vice versa? So I don't know. It's questions that we all have to ask. We must obviously be very, very cautious, be wary, and we must know that we are dealing with something that a lot of Americans don't have the knowledge to be discussing. We are dealing with a very, very complex situation, a situation that you have to study every single year of its existence to understand why we're here today. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Gino Falco, and I'm going to continue being the voice the young conservatives need, even when the left tries to silence us. We are going to fight globalism. We are going to pursue peace, fight for the interests of America all across the globe. We are going to put our citizens first before all. Don't forget that. Even when we're trying to pursue peace around the globe, we are going to put our citizens first. And mark my words, we will never elect a president who doesn't fight who doesn't fight for the interest of our people first. And I'm so glad that America First is even on the left now. America First is on the rise. Conservatives truly want America first. The liberals want America first. So I thank God for that, because we are America. We don't owe anybody anything. Truly, we can fight for the interest of our people and the interest of peace all around the globe, but we must take care of our people first. And that's what America First is. And I'm glad that the left recognizes that. I'm glad that the right recognizes that. And truly, we are headed on a good path because the youth knows what the heck is up. We know what's right. We know what's wrong. And truly, we are going to be the turning point in this country. America's comeback starts with us, but it begins right now with the youth who refuse to be silent, like me. Speak your mind, fight for the truth, fight for your beliefs, pursue open dialogue and debate, and we are going to be the reason why America goes on. We are the turning point. Thank you guys for tuning in.